This video might be controversial, but my goal is to help you understand the cybersecurity industry better. So in this video, I will give you my honest, no BS rating of cybersecurity certifications in terms of which ones are useful for you so you can learn a subject but also land a job. This is from my own journey when I was trying to break into cybersecurity 20 years ago, but also from what I see in the market, both as a hiring manager but also as a cybersecurity consultant where I help organizations run their cybersecurity division. When I was trying to land my first cybersecurity role, I thought I had it all figured out. People gave me the advice that I needed to do CompTIA A+ and CCNA to build that foundation before I can begin to learn how to do some ethical hacking activities. But as I was going through these certificates, I noticed that I was getting extremely bored learning both the A+ and the Cisco CCNA. But not only that, I noticed that the things that I was learning were completely irrelevant. I didn't know how learning the Cisco command line will help me out in doing ethical hacking for web application servers. It just made no sense. But then things got worse. I started noticing that some of my friends got their first cybersecurity job without even doing any of those certificates. In fact, I've even met fresh university graduates who got their first cybersecurity role without having any certifications or experience whatsoever. So I started questioning the path that I was on, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it led me to a journey of doing so many cybersecurity trainings and certifications, which gave me exposure to so many cybersecurity certification programs. And if this video manages to save time and money for one person, then I consider my goal accomplished. Let's get into it. CompTIA certificates are extremely popular among people who don't work in cybersecurity and among people who are extremely junior and early in their cybersecurity journey. The main advantage of the CompTIA certificates is that it's vendor neutral, which means instead of teaching you how to configure Palo Alto firewalls, they teach you in general what firewalls are and what they do, but they don't teach you how to configure a specific vendor firewall, which can be useful for someone who's new to the field, so you get to learn the generic concepts of how things are supposed to work. The other big advantage that I personally like about CompTIA is the CompTIA Security Plus is a beginner introductory certificate that will teach you the general foundations of what cybersecurity is. This was quite revolutionary because in the past we didn't have many cybersecurity certifications that will introduce you to the field. So Security Plus was and still is a good introduction to cybersecurity. Now there are many problems with CompTIA certificates. The biggest disadvantage of CompTIA certificates is that the exams are multiple choice exams, which means when people study for these certificates, they end up memorizing and cramming a bunch of concepts so they can pass the exam, which is not the best way to learn a topic in my opinion. We will use this popular tiering system. So the S tier is the super tier, and then comes the A, B, C, D, and then the F is the worst tier in the list. So the CompTIA certificates that I will look at is Security Plus. I think it does a good job introducing people to the field of cybersecurity. It delivers on the promise that it will teach you the foundational concepts of cybersecurity. It's not going to make you an expert, it's not going to make you an all-knowledgeable hacker man, but it's definitely a good introduction to cybersecurity. Then we have the CESA Plus, which is the CompTIA Cybersecurity Analyst certificate. I actually really like this one because it's a lot harder than the Security Plus, and it introduces you to an extremely useful concepts that you will use if you work as a cyber analyst. It will teach you about security operations, incident response, vulnerability management, and even reporting. Unfortunately, the same disadvantage that apply to all CompTIA certificates apply here. It's extremely theoretical, so you will end up memorizing and cramming a bunch of concepts to pass a multiple choice exam. But nonetheless, I still think the information in there is valuable. The next one is the CASB Plus. This is meant to be a tier above the CESA Plus. It's a little bit harder. It touches on concepts such as architecture and operations again, GRC, engineering, and cryptography. And then we have the CompTIA Pentest Plus. This is a penetration testing certificate. I honestly don't think this certificate serves any purpose because trying to learn ethical hacking from a theoretical multiple choice based exam is like trying to learn to drive a car by reading a book. Yes, you can learn all about the traffic rules by reading a book, but you still have to actually try and drive the car to learn driving. So in my opinion, Pentest Plus doesn't serve any purpose. To put them in our tiering list, I will put all of the CompTIA certificates as tier B because they have good theoretical information, but unfortunately they have the practicality that we need in cybersecurity. Except the Pentest Plus, I think it's rated as F because in my opinion it doesn't serve any purpose. It will just waste your time and money. Now before we move on to the next section, I didn't forget the popular CompTIA A+ and Network Plus and even things like CCNA. In my opinion, these are not cybersecurity certificates. These are general IT certificates, and for cybersecurity professionals I don't think it's a great idea to do them them. Now, if you've already done them, that's great. But if you haven't done them, then there are so many options that are cheaper and faster that will teach you the same concepts. And I talked about all of them in this video, so please check it out. The next one is the GIAC certificates. The GIAC certificates have an associated SANS training. The SANS Training Institute is the most popular cybersecurity training institute in the cybersecurity industry. Sure, your IT manager or network admin or even your hotshot junior cyber analyst may not have heard about the SANS Institute, but those of us who work in cybersecurity are extremely familiar with the SANS Institute. They are not only a training provider, but they've actually set some industry standards that we use in our day-to-day cybersecurity jobs. The way it works is you do a SANS training that is 4 to 6 days of training, depends on the course, and then you study and pass the associated GIAC exam. The SANS Institute has world-class cybersecurity training for a number of reasons. They are extremely selective on who the instructors are. So a SANS instructor is usually someone who have a lot of experience in cybersecurity. They are actively working in cybersecurity, so they are not a full-time instructor and they are not an academic, so they have the hands-on experience. And to become a SANS instructor, it's a very, very demanding process. So they've maintained this high quality of instructors throughout the years. Now compare that to your PhD university professor who have never worked a day in their life and they're trying to teach you how to become a cybersecurity professional. There is a huge difference. The other good advantage about SANS is the material is so high quality, it's always up to date. Their courses reflect problems that we face today in cybersecurity. Other great thing about SANS training is usually most of their courses have a practical component that you will do in the training. The other underrated advantage of SANS training is that they cover every topic under the sun. They've got a training course for every topic you can imagine. Even obscure things like they'll have a course dedicated to operational technology. They have courses dedicated to mobile device forensics. They have courses for cloud forensics. So whichever topic you want to learn, chances are there is a SANS training and you know that the quality is super high. And the final advantage of SANS training is that it's well respected within the cybersecurity industry. When people see that you've done a SANS training or a GIAC certification, they know that you know something that goes beyond memorizing and cramming and passing a multiple choice exam. Now, the biggest disadvantage of SANS training is the price. The cost of the training is about $8,000. And the reason behind that is the SANS training usually target companies. So they want your company to pay for the training so the employees can attend the training. Now, bonus tip, if you want to do SANS training cheaper, go to the work study program within SANS, apply there, and you might get a chance to be an assistant in a SANS training program where you get to do the training for much, much cheaper. I've done a few of those myself. I highly recommend it. Now, there are so many GIAC certificates, so it's nearly impossible to rate all of them. But if I was to group them all together and rate GIAC and even the SANS Training Institute all at the same time, they're definitely in the S tier. Anyone who works in the industry knows that, and they've maintained their quality throughout the years. The next one is ISACA. ISACA certificates focuses on the area of governance, risk and compliance, or GRC. The main advantage of ISACA is they're kind of the only GRC certificate providers. So if you want to do an IT audit certificate, then ISACA is pretty much all you have at the moment. The other thing that I like about ISACA is they run a lot of free events for the community. So if you go to Google and you type ISACA chapter in your own city, then chances are you'll find a really nice meetup that you can attend and you can network with other cybersecurity professionals. I highly recommend attending those. Now, unfortunately, there are many disadvantages with ISACA certificates. The first one is that to do ISACA certificates, you need 5 years of experience. And I'm talking here about the popular one, CISA, CRISC, and CISM. In my opinion, this experience requirement is not warranted. The topics in CISA and even CRISC and CISM to a certain extent are not exactly advanced. So any junior IT auditor should be able to do and pass this, at least the CISA certificate. So to me, they created an unnecessary hurdle. But the main biggest disadvantage that I personally don't like about ISACA is that the training itself doesn't teach you anything. So think of ISACA as after you get GRC experience, then you do ISACA certificates to kind of validate your experience. But if you do the ISACA certificate, they're not going to teach you how to do GRC, which is a huge problem in my opinion. And because of all of that, my tiering is C. I still think they hold some value, but unfortunately, they don't teach you anything. The next ones are ethical hacking certificates. Those are my absolute favorite certificates. I wish that the rest of the cybersecurity domains have good training materials similar to ethical hacking. The most popular ethical hacking certificate is the OSCP, and it's fully practical. And it's popular for a reason, because it will test that you can actually perform ethical hacking, as opposed to testing you on how you're gonna pass a bunch of multiple choice exams. But fortunately, we have other ethical hacking certificates. So we have the eJPT and the PJPT. Both are entry-level ethical hacking certificates certificates that are meant to introduce you to the field of ethical hacking using fully practical training and practical exams, which I'm a huge fan of. Even if you don't want to be an ethical hacker, in my opinion, doing these certificates is extremely helpful for you as a cybersecurity professional. So if I was to tier the eJPT and the PJPT, they are definitely tier A. Now, we talked about OSCP, but there is eCPPT and there is PNTP. All are extremely valuable practical ethical hacking certificates. In my opinion, they are tier S, because if you do them, you will learn so much, but doing the exam, you will also prove that you have the skill of ethical hacking. I personally know so many cybersecurity professionals who started studying for the OSCP, but they never managed to finish it because it's just hard. And finishing it also communicates to me that you are passionate about cybersecurity. As a hiring manager, I see so many candidates who tell me I'm very passionate about cybersecurity, but to me this is meaningless. Instead of telling me you're passionate about cybersecurity, show me what work you've done in the field. Show me the difficult projects that you've done, because this will prove that you're passionate. It's really hard to pass the OSCP without being passionate about cybersecurity. Now, there is EC Council and the Certified Ethical Hacker Certificate. This is a multiple choice exam based certificate. In my opinion, it's not the best way to learn ethical hacking. It's extremely similar to the Pentest Plus. So in my opinion, I would personally rate it as F, because doing it will not make you an ethical hacker, so it doesn't deliver on the promise, and for these reasons I'm tiering it as F. The next one is the ISC2 certificates. The CISSP is definitely the most popular certificate for people who have no idea how cybersecurity works. So for example, I'll get network engineers who come and ask me, oh, should I do CISSP to become a cybersecurity professional? Or I will meet someone who's a university student who would like to work in cybersecurity, and the first thing they ask me is, oh, should I do CISSP? The truth is, among people who actually work in cybersecurity, we don't care about CISSP. And there are so many reasons for this. The first thing is the CISSP is actually intended to make you a cybersecurity manager. This is the goal of the certificate. So it's meant to be a mile wide and an inch deep. So it touches on so many domains, but it doesn't go deep in any of those domains. So when ISC2 came up with this certificate, they thought this is what cybersecurity managers need. Now, the other reason that we don't really care about CISSP is because the vast majority of cybersecurity managers do not have CISSP, and they don't even care about it. Because to be a really good cybersecurity manager, you need to have a lot of depth in so many topics, but you also need management skills, which the CISSP definitely don't teach you. Other huge disadvantage of CISSP is that if you pass CISSP, I know for sure that you've just crammed a bunch of concepts. It's all about memorizing a whole heap of junk, in my opinion. Trust me, memorizing the types of fire alarms have nothing to do with cybersecurity. No one cares. Now, is the CISSP all that bad? No. There are few things going on for the CISSP. They actually have a group of cybersecurity professionals who contribute to the exam. So the multiple choice questions that you get in the exam have actually come from some really good cybersecurity professionals. So they try to emulate real world as much as possible in a multiple choice exam. In fact, one of my close friends sit in that committee. The other good/bad thing about the CISSP is that people who don't work in cybersecurity seem to somehow know about it. So when they do a job search cybersecurity, they see the CISSP thrown here and there for jobs that, frankly speaking, have nothing to do with CISSP. I have no idea why a security analyst would ever need a CISSP. Nonetheless, people still copy-paste the CISSP and they put it there. More often than not, this is just a wish list. So they'll put CISSP and they'll put a bunch of certificates. That doesn't mean they absolutely want you to have it. It just means if you have it, yep, nice to have, whatever. What you really need is the skill of being a cybersecurity professional. The other advantage of CISSP is that it's a little bit harder than Security Plus. It's not a lot harder. I personally know people who passed it in 2 weeks. Those are professionals who work in the field, who have the experience. So all they did was they just read a book quickly and went and took the exam. So yes, it is harder than Security Plus, but it's not that hard. In fact, it's a lot easier than something like the OSCP. So don't be fooled by shiny objects. Just because a CISSP show up on a job search doesn't mean it's as valuable as some beginners on the internet seem to think. In the real world, no one cares. So my personal rating of it is B, and that's mainly from what I see in the industry. Most people who have CISSP usually don't have that much experience. I'm aware that the CISSP asks you for 5 years of experience, but usually what happens is a helpless experience, for example, can qualify for you to meet that experience requirement, even if your experience of helpdesk had nothing to do with the security domains. It's good, it's a level above the Security Plus, but I wouldn't exactly call it an advanced certificate. There are also 2 popular certificates from ISC2, which is the SSCP. That was meant to be a stepping stone for the CISSP. In my opinion, it absolutely serves no purpose, so I would rate it as F. But then there is a new one called Certified in Cybersecurity. This is aimed at beginners who have no cybersecurity cybersecurity experience or skills. In my opinion, this is useful because it introduces people to the field of cybersecurity, although I personally think it's a little bit watered down, so I would rate it as C, just because there are other alternative beginner cybersecurity certificates that will teach you a little bit more. Next up is cybersecurity analyst certificates from vendors like Google, IBM, Microsoft, Splunk, and Cisco. These are certificates from big vendors like Google and Microsoft. They are aimed at people who have no IT experience, no technical knowledge, and no degree, and they teach you the basics of cybersecurity. This is fantastic news because even as far as 2 years ago, we did not have anything like this in the market. So kudos for these companies for creating a good quality training that's aimed to get more people to work in cybersecurity. Now you may be wondering which one is better, the Google cybersecurity certificate or the IBM or Microsoft or Splunk or Cisco. In my opinion, I wouldn't be splitting hairs on which one is better. I've explored all of them. I think they're all pretty good. There are minor differences and I will tier them a little bit different, but in my opinion, you can't go wrong with any of them. And they're all quite cheap, to be honest. So if you do one or two or even all of them, it's not going to take you a lot of time, but it will also not cost you a lot of money. Now, some of the advantages of these certificates is that a few of them come with hands-on labs like the Google certificate and even the IBM and Microsoft certificates. They definitely have hands-on lab where you get to practice what you learn, which is a huge thing, especially for someone who's completely new to IT or cybersecurity. It gives you a chance to practice, but it also improves your confidence and it helps you retain the information you learned. So you're not just cramming a bunch of concepts to pass a multiple choice exam. Now, if I look at the differences between them, I think the Google is a great option because it teaches you MySQL, Linux, and Python, which are extremely popular tools that you will use as a cybersecurity professional. The Microsoft certificates, it teaches you a little bit about Office 365 and Microsoft Azure cloud platforms, which are extremely useful. The IBM certificate will show you how to use things like GitHub and Snyk and the IBM X-Force, which are popular tools in the industry. Then we have the Splunk certificate. I think this is the odd one out because this certificate will not introduce you to cybersecurity as a field, but more so it will introduce you into how to use Splunk as a tool. But Splunk is an extremely popular tool, so it's definitely useful. And then we have the Cisco Certified Support Technician. Again, it gives you an introduction to cybersecurity as a field, which is extremely useful. So in my opinion, if I was to tier these certificates, they definitely deliver on the promise that they will introduce you to cybersecurity as a field. So to me, that's definitely a tier A. And this goes for the Google certificate, the IBM certificate, the Microsoft certificate, and the Cisco certificate. Splunk, unfortunately, does not really introduce you to cybersecurity. It more so introduces you to Splunk as a tool. So to me, that's definitely a tier C. Yes, it's useful, but it doesn't deliver on the promise that's an introduction to cybersecurity. Next up is cloud certificates. This is definitely a hot area in the market. There is a huge demand for cybersecurity professionals who understand and know how to use the cloud. The three biggest cloud providers are Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform. Amazon AWS is still the market leader in cloud. So if you work in cybersecurity or even if you work in IT, chances are you will run into Amazon AWS. They are still by far the most widely used and adopted cloud platform. In fact, as a consultant, every time I go to help a company with their cybersecurity journey, they always complain about how they have a huge Amazon AWS setup. They don't have many people who understand how to secure the AWS cloud. So it's an extremely useful skill. So to explore cloud security certificates, we have vendor certificates, so certificates from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. But we also have vendor neutral certificates as well. So starting with the most popular and most useful one, in my opinion, which is the Amazon AWS Security Specialty. You're meant to do that after you do something like the Amazon AWS Cloud Practitioner and the Amazon AWS Architect, and then you can do the AWS Security Specialty. It's extremely useful. The information and knowledge in there will definitely help you land the role securing the Amazon AWS Cloud. There is an equivalent to this certificate from Microsoft, which is the Microsoft Azure Cloud Engineer Associate. Again, extremely useful. Yes, in the market there is more AWS than Azure, but Azure is still widely used. Chances are you will run into companies running at least something like Office 365 and maybe SharePoint. So it's really useful to know about Azure security technologies. A less known one is from Google, which is the Google Cloud Security Engineer. Google has a much smaller market share. However, doing it is still useful because, believe it or not, all the cloud platforms are extremely similar. So once you learn and get good at one of the cloud platforms, the same skills are transferable to other cloud platforms. You will just find some differences in the names of the tools. That's all. So if I was to tier them, in my opinion, both the AWS and the Microsoft Azure certificates, both are tier A because the skills are definitely highly sought after. The Google Cloud Security Engineer, I would tier it as C just because it's not as popular and you're less likely to be dealing with Google Cloud security issues, at least in the present moment. Now looking at vendor neutral cloud cloud security certificates. From ISC2, we have the CCSP. This is meant to teach you general cloud security concepts. So the claim that this certificate will enable you to become a cloud security professional. Unfortunately, I haven't seen this happen in the real world. No one will hire you just because you have the CCSP. As hiring manager, we're looking for someone who knows how to configure security groups within Amazon AWS, or how to configure identity and access management in the cloud. We don't want someone who knows generic concepts about how cloud security should be. So in my opinion, this certificate doesn't really deliver on the promise of making you a cloud security professional. The same thing goes for the Cloud Alliance CCSK. Again, another theoretical certificate that claims to make you a cloud security professional by teaching you a bunch of concepts. Now, the Cloud Security Alliance have actually useful checklists that I've seen in the industry where people use the CSK checklist on how to secure clouds. This can be useful, but just because these spreadsheets and these checklists are around doesn't mean that the certificate itself is useful. Cloud security is one of those extremely practical things, so I'd rather you know how to configure security in Office 365 as opposed to memorizing concepts of how the cloud need to be secured. So if I was to tier them, both the CCSP and the CCSK are tier F, because I would never recommend anyone do them. Now, a common question I constantly get asked is the Google Cyber Certificate enough for me to land the job? Is the Security Plus enough for me to land the job? Is the CISSP enough for me to land the job? Is this training sufficient? Is this boot camp sufficient? And to be honest, the answer is always it depends on how much experience you have. But assuming you have zero experience and zero knowledge and all you did was one certificate or two certificates, the answer is maybe. You might get lucky and get hired with one certificate. In fact, I've seen people get hired with zero certificates. It definitely happened, but chances are you will probably need more. The certificates are meant to be used as a structured way for you to learn a subject, but especially those beginner level certificates are meant to be the beginning of your journey. They are meant to introduce you to the field and to get you started in your learning journey. But what ends up happening is after you finish one or two certificates, you'll find that you had to memorize and cram a bunch of concepts, and maybe you start to forget these concepts, but also you may not have so much confidence in applying to jobs or in landing your first job. So to solve this, I curated a list of practical projects that you can do progressively, so you can go from one project to the other. You start from beginner level projects all the way to intermediate projects, and then you do practical intermediate cybersecurity certificates. I created this roadmap specifically for people who've done some cybersecurity certificates and are looking for this next step on what to do. All of this is detailed in this video, and I'll see you there.